Hello, everybody. We are, I think, officially live. I'm going to double check with my crew just to make sure. I have someone monitoring to let me know when it's all good. But I am looking forward to taking your questions. The way we're going to do this format wise, quick little introduction for you guys. Then most of this is going to be your questions. I want to deal with exactly what's on your mind, whatever. Okay, we got the confirmation. We're good. That's excellent. All right. So I want to deal with whatever is on your mind regarding online dating. So submit your questions. My team will be looking through them and they'll be sending me over the most popular ones, maybe some that are particularly interesting, etc. And I do look forward to it. Quick announcement while we're waiting for everybody to get on here. We do have, speaking of online dating game, we do have the online dating bootcamp. It's at toddvonline.com. And that is at a special discounted price for just the next couple hours. So you definitely want to get on there after this, or even during it would be just fine. But check it out, and you're not going to want to miss it out on that. Basically, what that is me literally creating your online dating profile and photos with you for you, and then going through for 6 weeks of continuous revision and improvement. I'm going through the entire online dating process, all the way from getting the matches, obviously, to messaging the girls, getting dates, and then succeeding on those dates. So check that out. It's at toddvonline.com. With that said, hopefully some of you have submitted questions already. I'm going to start looking, and be sure to submit your questions in the chat because that's how you're going to get them answered. All right, let's look and see what we got. Okay. What do we got? First one, I think this is a good one. It says, I'm in my early 20s and looking for a relationship rather than hookups. Are there any dating apps that accommodate those people who are not into hookup culture? Okay, so a couple of things about this. First of all, yes, there are different dating apps with different kind of philosophies, right? So the ultimate non-hookup app, which is an app I absolutely hate, or actually I haven't even been on it as an app. I was on it as a website back in the day, but ultimate, like, pure non-hookup app, but also in my mind completely shitty app, is like eHarmony. And the issue there is they give you like a few matches curated based on emotional connection, and if you don't like them, you're shit out of luck because you can only choose the matches they match with you, and you get like 3 a day, and it's just awful. But it is relationshipy, so that does exist. There's also, if the reason that you want a relationship is for a religious reason, there's certainly things like JDate, Christian Mingle, that kind of stuff, and that's going to be a lot less hookupy as well. Even within the more normal mainstream type apps, you definitely have apps that have more of a reputation one way or another. So, for example, Tinder has a very hookup reputation. Although, to be fair, you could still start relationships off Tinder. I know lots of people who have. But sites like Bumble or Hinge have less of that reputation. I personally, between the two, I have to say Hinge is a million miles better than Bumble, in my opinion. But, whatever you like. Those have more of the relationshipy vibe a little more than Tinder does, although you can absolutely get hookups off of both of them as well. But the biggest point that I'm going to make is not about site selection here. It's about how you write your profile. If you write your profile in a way that screams, I'm looking for a hookup, you're going to get hookups. If you write your profile in a way that says, I'm looking for something more long term, you're going to get things more long term. Final kind of note on this, though, as much as your goal may actually be something long term, that doesn't mean to not be sexual at all in your profile. Okay. You still want to consider having some of that, what was I say, lover versus provider kind of thing. You want to build a lot of intrigue, because the best way to start a relationship is to have sex, right? Having sex is a great relationship starter. So just because you have sex early on doesn't mean it has to be a one night stand. I've had girls that I've dated for years and been in very serious relationship with that started with sex on the first night, right? The two are not mutually exclusive. So unless you have a reason of like not you don't want sex till marriage or something like that, the easiest way to get into a relationship actually is to start with sex early on. If you're trying to not have sex and build the relationship, well, that's great. But if while you're going on dates 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9, she's busy sleeping with other guys, she's going to be developing a connection with them in a way she's not with you, and you're going to be at a disadvantage. So you don't need to make things harder for yourself, right? Just because you sleep with a girl early in a relationship does not mean that it is just a hookup relationship. It's a lot about the framing, and it's about a lot of things besides just when you have sex. So certainly I in general, unless there's a very specific reason for you, I in general don't agree with trying to slow down the sex part. I just agree with increasing the connection part and increasing kind of the long-term nature of things, so that, there's a possibility of the long term. I think that's a better way to go overall. Let's see. Next question. I don't understand this. Are Photoshop pictures that don't edit you just the background to low value? Um, so this is an interesting question, and there's a technical question here and a moral question here. And so what you're basically saying is if you were to Photoshop your photos to make you look cooler because you're in cooler places or with cooler people, would that be low value? So the first question there is how well do you do it? Right? If you do a bad job and get caught, it's definitely incredibly low value and a huge turnoff and a problem. If you did it and you did it well, technically it wouldn't be low value, at least from the perspective of the girl. And it actually could work and it could actually even be an effective technique. However, on a moral level, I would recommend against overtly lying in a way that is going to come back and bite you in the ass. So if you like did a photo of you in space, for example, and you've never been to space, and the girl is gonna be, that's awesome. When did you go to space? And you have to back it up, and then she catches you in that lie. It's not going to look so good. For example, if you say you've traveled, you have photos of a country you've never traveled to, and then she asks you about what the experience was there, and you mess up and get caught in the lie, that's not going to be very good for you. Also on a on a moral level, there's the question, is lying right or wrong? And I'm not going to get into that with you, although I do disagree in general with lying. For the most part, right? You don't overtly lie. You can exaggerate things. You can stretch the truth a little bit. You can definitely frame things in the best possible light. And you can definitely be a good salesman. But overtly lying, I'm not the biggest fan of, because one, you get caught, and then two, it also affects you. The whole idea that you had to lie about yourself to get a girl, the idea that you had to be something you're not to get a girl, is problematic. And to be fair, if you are being someone you're not in order to get the girl, it may not last as well, because she may have liked you for something you're not, and then you're either forced to be that thing in order to keep her, or in order to be consistent, or you're unable to do it, and then she ends up like breaking up with you. And I won't get into like I actually have an interesting story about that, but it's not from online dating, so I'll leave it off. But just suffice to say, I had one time where I basically met a girl, and a big part of how I picked her up was convincing her I had a ton of money. And we ended up hooking up. We ended up, we were together for like a week or two. And then she met someone who actually had the kind of money I was representing I had. And it had become clear I didn't have that. And she just like upgraded. Not that it was an upgrade really, but a financial upgrade from me to him. And so just be careful that the reasons that you're putting out there in your profile to like you are things you can actually back up, because otherwise you're going to have an incongruence down the line, and it's just going to give you issues down the line. All right. Next question. This is a very interesting question. Do you think you should always strictly match the bubble size of the girl's text? Wouldn't that make the conversation kind of boring and rigid? Yes, you're right. It would make the conversation boring and rigid. I love that the assumption here is that the answer is yes. The answer is yes, you should, and now I have to like disprove that assumption. That's not something I ever said. By the way, this is from Joshua. I'll try and say the names of the people giving the photos in general. For one before is from someone named Hurricane. If your name's in it, I'll put it. Just a first name. I'm not going to do your last name, obviously, for privacy purposes. Okay. So this idea that you should always match the bubble thing of the girl's text. Let's just get into this. First of all, the words always and never, just get rid of those from your dating vocabulary, and probably just get rid of them from your vocabulary in general in most cases. Okay. This idea of having this strict, rigid rule of she writes 2 lines, you write 2 lines, she writes 1 line, you write 1 line. That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, think of it this way, right? If she's writing, if think of it as though if maybe this girl, the more you give her to respond to, the more she responds back. Well, in theory, then you respond more, and then she responds more, and she responds more, and you respond more. And by like text 10, you're like writing a novel back and forth. That's obviously ridiculous. On the other hand, let's say it goes the other way. She writes very little, so you write very little. She has less to respond to, she writes very little. And now you're writing like one letter back and forth. It just doesn't make any sense, right? If she was adopting the same strategy as you, it obviously would go nowhere. So it's a ridiculous strategy. Also, the idea of this matching the bubble thing, which by the way, I have never said, I don't know where you got that advice. There is this idea of like not over investing, et cetera, but matching the bubble, I have never heard and I've never said. So that's like ridiculous to me. But the idea is, in general, you do want to keep your answers relatively short. In fact, I do something very different than matching the bubble. A girl writes me something very long, and I write her something much shorter, but still like acceptably long, right? There's still enough information there, but it's a much shorter. So if the girl writes me like, like 10 lines of text or whatever, I may write back 2 or 3 lines, right? Which is enough to convey the idea. In general, your messaging, it should be 1 or 2 ideas per message, no more. You do not want more than 2 ideas in messaging. There's a quick note from my team. My computer's still on the messaging app, so please don't message me on that because it's going to come through in the background noise. So don't send me messages during this, guys. Thanks. Um, so, okay. So what should you be doing? Like 1 to 2 ideas per message. That's it. If she sends you 10 ideas, you're not obligated to respond to all 10 of them. Pick the 1 or 2 you want to respond to and respond to that. That's it. That's enough. If you're getting to the point where you need to send 10 responses, instead of messaging, pick up the phone, get her on a date. If you're on the app, close her for a phone number, right? She likes you, she's investing. Use that as an opportunity to move it forward rather than as an opportunity to like dot every I and cross every T and write 10 messages. On the other hand, let's say the girl, you send an opener to a girl and she writes you like back smiley face and that's it. Well, she wrote you 1 character. What are you going to send her 1 character back? Or are you going to send her just a smiley face or a winky face or whatever back? That's just like, it's ridiculous. It's never going to go anywhere. In fact, at that moment where she's not giving you much, that's when you need to provide a little more to the conversation. And so that's when I would actually consider writing maybe even 3 or 4 lines, right? I usually don't go more than 3 or 4 lines in text. More than that, it starts to look needy, regardless of how long her previous text was. But you need to do a little more to get her talking. So trying to exactly match her bubble is ridiculous. Okay. What you don't want to do is get into a situation where you're constantly writing a ton and she's constantly writing nothing. Right. That's really bad. You also don't want to get into the situation where timing wise, she's waiting days and days to respond. And then you're responding in 10 seconds. Those are 2 very bad precedents and those you want to avoid. But this like exact bubble matching thing, wherever that came from, is absolutely ridiculous. No, you should not do that. You should write what's appropriate to the situation. And yeah, you shouldn't be needy. And yeah, you shouldn't be way out of whack. You shouldn't be super invested when she's not invested at all. And you shouldn't be totally ignoring her when she's invested. You should, if she's invested, be moving things forward. But in general, matching bubbles is, I don't know where that came from. I think it's ridiculous. Don't get that into your head. And also the words always and never, just don't have those in your head either. All right, next question. Okay. Hi, Todd. Just like you, I'm also 5'8". How do you pass the "you're too short for me" shit tests? It's from Zhao. Or Zhao. I don't know how that Portuguese name is exactly pronounced, but anyway, I assume it's Portuguese. So I'm actually shorter than you. I'm like 5'7". I'm not 5'8", but close enough. How do you pass the "are you too short for me" shit test? To be fair, I don't really get those because the girl already matched with me, right? The girl already matched with me and I don't really worry about it. And I don't have that listed in my profile. By the time I meet the girl live, she already really likes me. She's already bought into me. She's already invested, et cetera, et cetera. If I am particularly worried about it, you can actually set up the date and actually be seated by the time she gets there so that she meets you sitting down already. And then, gets to know you, really likes you, is turned on. And by the time you're standing up, she already has made the decision in your favor. If you're actually really worried about that, like if the girl's like 6'2" or something like that, and she'll just tower over you, well, maybe you could consider something like that. But in general, you should be winning her over with your personality. The height thing shouldn't be a big deal. And if she already, clicked on your profile, she already likes you and it shouldn't really, really come up. One thing that I will, if a girl gives me a flat out question about it, I'll just answer that, generally it's not been I've never had any complaints or something like that, or I'm tall enough, something like that. If she asks a specific height, I'll give a specific height. But for the most part, I've really never had that come up. So, I mean, like, maybe it'll come up once in a blue moon, but like I've been online dating for years and years and years, and I can't really think of it happening. As long as the vibe is good and the girl's liking you, these types of things don't typically come up. Now, girls do put that stuff in their profile, right? Or how tall are you or something like that. But it's very unlikely. The only place I could really see that is if it was on like a site like maybe a Bumble where the girl's messaging you first and she does that like as a shit test or something, but it's extremely rare. I don't think you need like a specialized answer for that. Just be cool in general, make it not a big deal, and then ride whatever good you have going there. And legitimately, if the girl is towering over you and that is a major problem for her, well, maybe that's not the best best girl for you. Also, one thing I will say, I'm not particularly into super tall girls myself, so maybe that's a thing too. I don't find that the sex is particularly as good when the girl's 6 inches taller than you, but that's just me. All right, let's see. Okay, this is from an old school opener. It says, if you use the opener, "you're adorable, fingers crossed you're not crazy," and the girl replies, "what do you mean by crazy?" How would you reply? Well, first of all, that's one of the most common openers that you're going to get. So yeah, you should definitely be prepared for something like that, right? So every opener you're going to have, and this is very important in optimizing and making your online game efficient, it has what we call invisible threads. It has the responses girls are going to give to that particular opener. And for this, fingers crossed you're not crazy. What do you mean by crazy? That's one of the invisible threads. Other ones would be, I'm totally crazy. I'm not crazy at all. What makes you think I'm crazy? Different stuff like that, right? But yeah, or like I'm actually quite boring. There's a lot of different invisible threads you could get, but not a lot. There's like 5 or 6 different ones, so you should be prepared for them. What do you mean by crazy is probably one of the most optimal responses to this, because it gives you a great avenue to continue the conversation. She's asking you to continue. She's asking you for more information. She's intrigued enough to ask, etc. So generally, what I would do here is I would say maybe a push pull type thing, like crazy could be this or this. So you could give an example like you seem somewhere between, doing shots on the bar and taking an impromptu trip to Cabo with no bags packed, something like that, right? That's an example. Or it could be like you seem like you could be fun. I just hope we don't end up in prison. So these like kind of push pull examples of what crazy could be one answer. Another way you could go, which is less generic, you have to actually look at the girl's profile, is you could mention something. You could be like, well, this thing in your profile is cool, but this other thing, gives me pause or is a little troubling, etc. But basically, you have a free reign to cold reader. You have a free reign to give some more interesting information that's going to get her more intrigued. And as long as there is a good format to it, a little bit of a compliment, a little bit of a negative, or a little bit of extra intrigue being built, you're just actually making that first message better in your response. So this is actually a pretty optimal response. You should be hoping for a response like that in when you send that message. This is kind of like the response. Like when you get this response, this is what you're trying to have gotten. Okay. How do I keep the momentum up when I can't meet the girl? So any interaction is either going to be moving forward or moving backwards. It's getting better or getting worse. And it's very hard to keep it the same. So the problem when you can't meet up is that if you don't meet up for long enough, since it can't escalate further, it's going to go backwards. What you do want to do to keep it going, though, is you want to micro step it forward. So if you would normally go from the app to the date, which by the way, I usually go app to phone to date, but let's say you go app to date, if that's your normal progression. Well, you can't go app to date. So what should you do? Well, now you should go app to phone and then phone to FaceTime. And then FaceTime to maybe more intimate FaceTime or more regular FaceTimes, and then you up the content of the conversation from more platonic and friendly to more sexual, etc. You keep upping it and upping it and upping it, and then this idea that you can't meet up eventually should fade. This whole idea of not being able to meet up should no longer be a factor because the girl likes you enough. She's willing to meet up regardless of the circumstances. She's willing to fly to your country to meet you. She's willing to call in sick from work to meet you, etc. And that's what you're eventually going for. So the eventual thing is that you keep the momentum and you increase the momentum because you can't meet the girl until the girl's desire to meet you is so strong that now you can meet her. Because whatever is going on in her life, if it's strong enough, it can be dropped, right? Girls have moved to different cities for guys before. Girls have called in sick from work to meet guys before. Girls have taken a trip across the country to meet guys before. So there's no, she can't meet me. That's not really possible. You want to just make the buy-in strong enough that she does meet you. And that's the case regardless of the situation. All right. Hey, Todd, how should you do? Oh, by the way, that was Angelo. The previous one was Gary. So thank you guys for those questions. Hey, Todd, how should you do game for someone being an explicit introvert like me, where I do online texting much better than real life? For example, the talking pacing in real life don't match. And this is from Hong. So what you need to do here is you need to work on your live game. I'm sorry to tell you, you do. Regardless of whatever you're going to do online, it's absolutely essential that when you meet up, you be a high value guy. I'll tell you an interesting quick story on this. I had an idea for a business back in the day, once upon a time, that I tried very briefly. The idea was I would set up, because I was really good at online dating. I would set up a service where I just basically get people dates from online. Forget coaching them. I'll just get them the dates. And so I just posted on Craigslist as a trial and got a person who's like, hey, I want you to get me the dates. And I quoted him 2 prices. I said, here's the price for getting a phone number. Here's the price for getting a date. Which would you like me to do for you? He said, dates for sure. And so I said, okay, fine. Send me the profile. Send me links to the profiles of like 25 girls that like you think are attractive that you'd be happy to go on dates with. And I'll start getting to work, getting you dates with those girls. So he sent me the list. I started messaging the girls. I ended up getting him a date with this really cute girl who is on his list and like his type and everything like that. He shows up for the date. He's like all excited. And then after the date, he messages me. He's like, this was terrible. She was awful to me. I never want to see her again. I hate myself, etc. So what happened was, in order to get him the date, I conveyed him as a cool guy who could, handle himself socially. He showed up on the date and he was anything but a cool guy, could have handled himself socially. And the girl basically just berated him and hated him and left. And so online dating is an incredible tool for game. It's an incredible tool for getting you dates. And in having those dates, you can practice dates and get better on those dates. So it's actually an incredible tool for learning as well. But end of the day, online will only take you so far. You can't put your penis in the girl through the internet. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually, match up in person, and your profile and then how you are in person should match up with congruence to a certain degree. But it's more even just a level thing. You need to have some game in person, and that's actually why on Online Dating Bootcamp, we start off with profile and photos, then we go to messaging. But by the end, I'm talking to guys about how to handle the dates, how to take girls home from the dates, how to do actual, the in-person part of the game as well. Because, the online is great for getting the dates, but you do have to meet up in person and you do have to deliver in person and have some good game there. And that's actually why I'm so happy to be, as an online game coach, that I have coached live game for 2 decades beforehand, because the two do dovetail, right? Learning live game will help your online game. Learning online game will help your live game, and they really do mesh. But you need to have both, right? You can't you can't suck when you show up. But the good news is, online game and getting dates is probably the single best way to practice dates. So just understand, if you're not the best live yet, practice. Treat it as practice, treat it as growth. You're going to get better with each and every one. And it should be a fun and interesting experience along the way. And it's a much softer landing and a much easier way to get good than cold approaches, because you're going to get at least largely positive responses and at least friendly responses on dates. So it's a much easier environment in which to learn, but you're going to have to learn. I can't say anything else. You're going to have to get better at that. And being an introvert should not hold you back. I'm a natural introvert myself. It's not that being an introvert is an issue. It's that not having good game yet is an issue. And that's what you need to work on. You need to work on knowing how to move a conversation forward. You need to work on knowing how to escalate physically. You need to work on knowing how to handle shit tests, all those kind of things that are standard game type things. Okay. Next question. Once you get the girl's number in your phone, you said it's a good idea to call. What do you do when she doesn't pick up and it doesn't make you look needy? And this comes from someone named King Boo. All right, interesting name. So you should call if possible. That doesn't mean you should always call. Remember this idea of always and never in game, right? There's no, you got the girl's number, you should call. Some girls, you'll do better off by texting. Some girls, you do better off by calling. You have to gauge the receptivity level. And I usually don't just call out of the blue. I usually text first before I call, at least once. At least I text and let them know I'm going to be calling, or I text and then once things are good, I say, hey, I'm going to give you a call, and I pick up the phone or whatever. So it's not like I automatically just call the girl. And I certainly don't call the girl out of the blue without texting. And I also try and call the girl at a time when I think she's likely to pick up. So if I know that she's at work, I usually don't call because she probably can't pick up. If I know that she's not at work and she just said she's not doing anything for the evening, then maybe I'll pick up and call. So I want to increase my chances of her actually picking up the phone. I want to be smart about when I call. If I do call and she doesn't pick up, another part of being smart about when you call is you call at a time when there was something in the conversation for you to call about. And so if she picks up or she doesn't pick up, then you just message, hey, had something interesting just came up, give me a call back or something like that. Or here, hit me back when you're around or something like that. And she might call you back or she might text you back or something like that. But then you continue the conversation and it's not a big deal. Okay. So you just have something. It's a good idea when you're starting out, have something planned for if she doesn't pick up, I'm just going to text this. And that text would have been a natural part of the conversation, and calling would have been a natural progression of the conversation too. So it's not needy. And certainly you don't be calling into the vacuum and not getting responses. You want to go back to texting if she's not responding, etc. But in general, yeah, usually if I call and she doesn't respond, I just shoot a quick text being like, hey, I guess you're not around. Hit me back, something interesting to tell you or something like that. Something along those lines. Doesn't have to be that exact message by any means, but just something that says, hey, I just wanted to tell you via the phone, but anyway, hit me back. Something like that. Okay. Next question from someone named Tyler. Do you feel like outright saying you're looking for a relationship, even if in a good frame, in your bio is a low value move? The only girls that do such don't seem like they have options. I think it depends. I think it definitely depends how you frame it. There are ways to frame looking for a relationship high value, and there are ways to frame looking for a relationship as low value. Basically, if it looks like you're looking for a relationship because you want comfort and safety, that's going to come off as low value. If it looks like you're looking for a relationship because you're bored of all the girls throwing themselves at you for hookups and you want something more serious, that's going to be high value. Okay. So you need to be thinking about what is the framing of, and if the framing is, tired of the hookups, or oftentimes I'll put like, actually, I wouldn't put this directly in the bio anyway. Not that you couldn't, but I just don't. But if you did put it directly in your bio, you might be like, hooking up is fun. I'm certainly open to it, but I would really prefer someone who I want to keep seeing after, I want to see multiple times. Something like that could work, right? Where you say, look, I'm down to hook up. Like, hooking up is fun. I'm a sexual being. If you want to have sex with me, we can do that, but I'd really prefer something ongoing. Or when girls ask me in text what I'm looking for and stuff like that, I usually say, like, I'm not looking to get married on the first date, but something is good. You wouldn't want to have it only once, right? So something like that could be a good framing, but it definitely depends on what frame it's coming from. It comes from the frame of, I've already hooked up a lot and I don't need more of that, then certainly the relationship frame could be good. If it comes from the frame of, I just want the comfort of a relationship, I don't want to deal with this whole dating thing. It's like this whole idea of, I want to be off the app because the experience is so bad. That's kind of a low value move. I don't like that frame at all. Okay, how do I get around the girls' excuse slash shit test of, I will only go out after the pandemic is over? Um, well, I mean, it depends how strong that is. But the ways to handle it are, one, have a lot of girls, right? One of the best things about online dating is that you have a ton of options. So if one girl says that, you still have the other 10 girls that messaged you today. That makes it a lot easier, right? And you're still, whatever. You just, okay, she's not a viable candidate, whatever. If you really, really like her, stay in touch with her and date her after the pandemic if you want to. But you can also go deeper on that, right? If she starts to like you more, that may change. If she views you as her absolute dream man, she may change that rule for you. A lot of girls change their rules. Like, they have their rule and then they meet the guy that makes them break the rule. You want to be the guy that makes them break the rule, and you absolutely can do that. Also, you might want to dig into what the reason for it is, right? Is it because of whatever reason? Is it because she is, living with old people in her family, right? Is it like a pure safety concern? Is it she's worried about getting a ticket for like being out and like breaking a curfew in various places, et cetera, et cetera? Is it that like her business or work is under like super stressful times and she needs to focus on that just to get through it? I mean, there's different reasons why someone might come to that position. But if you can understand the reason, you may be able to solve that problem, right? So if it's the situation of health, maybe you can suggest that both of you be like, hey, I'm being careful too. Why don't we both get a test, and then we can meet up in like a day or two after the test once you get our results in, right? And then boom, you're fine, right? I've had a test, I haven't seen anybody. You had a test, you haven't seen anybody. We're safe. Let's meet up. That could work. Or you could do the whole, okay, cool. On the first date, we'll just actually like, let's just go hang out in the park and hopefully you find a place that's warm and sort of comfortable, whatever. But you're like, hey, we'll just hang out. We'll be, walk on the beach. And we can be distant as we walk for the first date. And then if we like each other, then we can consider options from there. Right. But you just want to like find a way to solve that objection, because that's not a shit test, by the way. Whenever girls are giving, we'll call it resistance, there's two forms of it. There's what I call objection or condition. This is actually a term from Zig Ziglar in sales. The objection is something that is emotional and coming from like that emotional desire to put up a wall. Condition is something that's not coming from inside the girl, it's coming from an external circumstance that's making something hard. So coronavirus is not an objection, it's not an emotional thing for the girl, although she may have emotional responses to it. It's a condition. It's a thing in the outside world. So if you can logically solve the condition, you'll be fine, right? Objections are solved emotionally because they're emotional in nature. Conditions are solved logically because they're logical in nature. So here you just need to be smart and problem solve, right? This is not even, it's kind of a game thing because the more bought in she is, the more willing she is to go along with whatever problem solution you have. But this is quite frankly a problem solving thing, right? It's coming up with an adequate solution to the problem. All right. That was from Igor, by the way. Next question. What should you text after securing a relative time for a date? The girl says she's pretty busy and she'll let me know, gives me her number and Snapchat, and it usually ends with a flake. So yeah. So first of all, you're definitely not in control of this date setting process if you're getting that, right? She's relatively busy. She'll let you know, etc. Usually I will just like not take that date. I'll just be like, hey, actually, you know what? It sounds like you are busy then. When's that time that's better for you when you can be a little more sure? Right. Or you can be like, hey, listen, I'm busy as well. I'll pencil you in, then I'll follow up with you, et cetera, et cetera. But you want to keep the ball in your court a little bit in terms of the follow up, because girls typically won't follow up themselves. And also this whole idea of I'm busy, I'll let you know. Like if you're getting, oh, I'm busy, I'll let you know. You should take that as it's already a no, right? You just don't take that date. Be like, you know what? Let's actually do it at a time when we can actually be more sure, et cetera, et cetera. Or Something along those lines, right? You don't want to be taking that "I'll let you know" date. You don't want to be sitting waiting for the girl to get back to you and not knowing whether you're on or not. That's not a position you want to be in. I heavily avoid that position. If that is the case, again, either reschedule or then set a time. Be like, hey, you know what? Actually, how about if I just get back in touch with you on XYZ day and we'll figure it out once we know, right? But you want to be again in charge. You want to have an extra text where you can send it without looking needy because it's already agreed in those kind of situations. So the issue is not how you should follow up with that. The issue is you shouldn't be in that situation at all. The issue is you shouldn't be ending up with the "I'm busy, I'll let you know." "I'm busy, I'll let you know" is some bullshit, right? So either, hey, you know what, let's do it a time you're not busy, or hey, actually, sounds good. I'll actually check back in with you around this time because I might be busy as well. We'll see. Okay. But yeah, value your time and stay in charge of the interaction. Stay in charge of moving things forward. In the same way that you don't want to just give a girl your number and not take hers, because even if she likes you, they very rarely follow up. You don't want to be waiting for the girl to get back to you on the date and confirm the date. You want to be the one reaching out, not necessarily confirming, but reaching out and just moving things along and moving things forward. Also, having the idea of a vague date agreed upon before you make a specific date really, really helps. And getting the girl more bought in before you go for the date really, really helps. So just having good game, getting a girl chasing you more, all these kind of things fundamentally help with flaking before the fact. But definitely the "I'll let you know" busy, I'll let you know is just no. I don't take that date. I would rather just schedule for another time or something like that. This is gonna be by the way, that was from Dom. The next one's from Jacob with a K, Jacob K. Which is this one's funny because it says, can you talk about the difference between messaging high value girls between versus messaging, say, a 5 to 7? I wouldn't know. I don't message 5 to 7s. And you can message 7s by all means, but why are you messaging a 5? Why are you messaging a girl that you personally consider a 5? A girl that you consider just be bang average, why would you possibly be even bothering with that? And there is a fundamental difference when you go that low on the scale. Okay. So there are girls that are incredibly hot and know they're hot. There are girls that are very hot and know they're hot. Girls that are cute and know they're cute. And then there are girls that probably don't even think they're cute and they've had a very different upbringing and different life than the hotter girls. And when you start getting into 5s, which I don't even know how to relate to a 5 in a romantic way. I can relate to a 5 as a friend. I do not know how to flirt with a 5 because I've never cared to try. Sorry to tell you, I just haven't. It doesn't make sense to me. Right? To me, a 5 is a girl that like she may as well be a man, right? You look at her and you don't feel anything sexual for her. Like 7 is my absolute bottom where like she registers as a female for me. Anyway, so yeah, it is fundamentally different. But the general answer to this would be the hotter the girl is, the more she knows that she's hot. The more you need to try and get her chasing you, the more you should focus on value early on rather than comfort, different things like that. The girls that are more just cute or in the case of a 5, just average, which again, don't message average girls. But in the case of that, you're going to build a lot more on comfort, a lot more on connection and matching personalities and things like that. But really honestly, if you consider the girl a 5, have some pride. Aim higher. Aim higher. Aim for at least what you consider to be your personal 7. You need to, when you see a girl, you shouldn't be thinking like, oh, I'll take the girl that will have me. You need to be thinking, this girl's at least attractive. I'm happy. I'm excited to go on the date. You shouldn't be dragging yourself out on the date for practice. Okay. Anyway, sorry, no offense to like unattractive women, but they're wonderful people. I just don't want to date them. Okay, cool. What if you don't travel a lot? I really don't like going to fancy places. What kind of photos do I upload to display an interesting life? Also, I'm guessing topless photos are a big no, says Abdul. Topless photo. It's just funny that you call it topless photos. It's not like you don't have boobs. So for you, it's maybe called shirtless selfie or something like that. The question on whether or not you should have a photo with your shirt off really depends a lot on how good looking you are with your shirt off. If you are in extraordinary shape, absolutely take a photo with your shirt off, or take a photo where you are maybe wearing like a tank top and you can tell you're built or something like that, right? By all means, if you have a really good body, show that shit off. That is an asset. If you have an average body, maybe not. If you have a bad body, definitely not. But yeah, they're like topless photos depends on you. Topless photos, shirtless photos. That's funny because I just never hear topless referring to guys, only girls. Okay, but what if you don't travel a lot? You don't go to fancy places, et cetera, et cetera. Not necessary. Those are nice to have if you can have them. If you have some travel photos, great. If you have some social proof photos of you with some girls or with some cool guys, great. But can you have a bio where it's literally just photos of you? That's it? Yes, you can. Do you know how I know that? because my current bio on both Tinder and Hinge, which are both crushing it, have only photos of me at the moment. Not to say that's perfect, but when I made both of those bios, I just took the photos that I had available to me at the moment. I didn't really look that hard, and they're getting such good results. I haven't felt the need to change it. Now, would it be nice to get a social proof photo? Yes, it would, but it's not really necessary because my photos already are of decent enough caliber in terms of the well taken, and because my bio is already implying a lot of social proof, so I get away with it. But yeah, could I have some social proof photos? It would add to it. Yes. Should I have some travel photos? Could I? Should I? Yes, I could. And I've had that sometimes in past bios. I've never really focused so heavily on the travel aspect, which is funny because I actually have traveled the world. Um, Mainly, my number one rule for photos is make sure you look your physical best. That's number one rule. Beyond that, yes, try and look like you have an interesting life and try and look like you're stylish and cool and that kind of stuff. But the number one is look physically good. Like find the photos that you're well lit and you look your physically best. And then from there, all those other things are nice. It's nice to have travel photos, not necessary. Nice to have social proof photos, not necessary, et cetera, et cetera. So you should be totally fine without those. Not a big deal. Okay. What are some questions to screen her out of actually being crazy? Okay. I mean, funny enough, if you use the crazy opener, are you like fingers crossed you're not crazy or something like that? You might get some stuff along those lines. In terms of girls actually being crazy, one thing that I like to do if I'm at all worried about it, and I like to do this in general anyway, is to have a quick phone call before the date. And this is for two reasons. One, it makes the date way less flaky. Like if a girl made plans with you on a phone call, she's way more likely to show up. But also for me, with doing online dating, if you're doing it right, you're getting so many matches, you have lots of options. You don't want to waste a night on a girl you have no chemistry with. And so I like to call and just have a quick phone call, and I can find out within 5 minutes on a call whether I'm going to enjoy meeting the girl in person. If I'm like pulling teeth to get the girl talking on the call and the girl seems like vapid and dumb and boring on the call, I'm not going to like that date. So then I just don't go on that date. Okay. You don't need to date girls that you're not into. So I'll just screen them on the date. And also, if the girl's super loopy crazy, you'll probably figure something like that out on the date as well. So just more interaction is good. But the other thing is just set the date near your place in not at your place if you're worried she's crazy, please, but at a place sort of in your area. So it's not a huge inconvenience for you to get there, and a nice well-lit public place so that if you need to make an escape, you can safely, and then just meet the girl and you'll find out in 5 minutes. And if you waste your time, you at least got a good story out of it. So I'm not super concerned about a girl showing up and being crazy. Not necessarily. I prefer to show up, and the reason I do a phone call is more to establish I have good chemistry with a girl rather than like the crazy thing. Who cares? If she's crazy, you just walk away and you wasted 5 minutes. But if you could have chosen a girl you had better chemistry with instead of her, that's a better use of your time. So that's really the purpose of the screening call for me. But it also does serve to eliminate some of the crazies. Okay. Yeah, by the way, for these questions for the profile, one thing I do want to let you guys know for the online dating bootcamp, one big part of that is you actually start off with a one-on-one call with me where literally all these questions about your photos, we'll go through all the photos you have and pick the photos. And if you need to get photos taken, I'll even tell you how to go about them and what photos you're looking for and that kind of stuff. And then we'll sit down and actually literally write your bio. Like we will literally brainstorm what's about you, write your bio, edit your bio, and you'll walk away with a finalized, here's what to post online. And you'll continue revising it throughout the course because all first drafts suck compared to later drafts. But you'll have at least a good workable first draft that should be getting you a solid funnel. So that's one of the things we definitely do on the program since it's been mentioned a lot. Okay. Next question. What if I'm a 7 myself, but presenting myself as a 9 on Tinder? Bit weird to show up on a date looking worse than expected, isn't it? So here's the thing about being a man. The beautiful, beautiful thing about being a man is that your physical appearance is only a small part of your overall perception. If you are high value in other ways, your physical appearance doesn't matter. And being a 7 is more than adequate. As a man, being really honest, I probably am about a 7. Maybe even a 6, right? I'm not even that good looking of a guy. Now, I've done decently well with it, right? I got a good haircut. I found the, facial hair that like makes me have a decent shape to my face instead of looking baby faced. I dress well. I'm in relatively good shape. And at least relatively good shape where I look good in a shirt, at least, even if I'm a little overweight for shirtless at the moment. But the fact of the matter is I've done the best I can with my innate qualities, and you should do the same. But most of how you're going to be perceived is going to be in your personality, thankfully. So this idea of I show up and I'm less good looking than I was, whatever on my profile, the girl responded in part to how you looked on your profile. She responded a lot to how you conveyed yourself and how you message and different things like that. And if you show up and you're awesome, it doesn't matter if you're a 7. As long as you're like, if you're like above average looking as a guy, you are absolutely fine. And if you're below average looking, you're still probably fine with an amazing personality. And also with a few tweaks, it's not that hard to get to above average looking. If you're in decent shape, have decent style and a decent haircut, you'd have to be really horrendously bad looking to be below average, because most guys are just terrible in those areas. Okay. So, one, as a man, don't worry so much about your looks, right? Girls are not judging you in the same way you're judging them. They are judging you and you are judging them, absolutely, but it's on different factors. It's for different criteria. And so don't apply their criteria or your criteria to yourself. It's not accurate. That's not how it goes. It should be completely fine. I probably look better in my Tinder photos than I look in person, maybe. Probably. But it's fine. I've never had a problem when I show up in person. As long as you show up and you're recognizable, you're fine, because then your personality can cover it from there. If you show up and you're unrecognizable, like if they think you just faked the photos completely, that's a problem. But as long as you're recognizably the same person, you're absolutely fine. And then when you show up, you want to make sure you've done the best you can with your appearance. Okay. That was from Thomas, by the way, or Tomas, probably the way it's spelled. Okay, next question. Hey, Todd, from Malcolm. What is the best way to convey non-neediness once you have her number and getting her out without being try hard? I mean, this is like a weird question, because the answer is just good game. Have good text game. Do that, right? And then be good on the phone and be good in person. But it's very general, right? The question basically here is, how do you have good game? And the answer is, watch every video on my channel, especially the ones about online dating, if you're around this, and take the online dating bootcamp, because that's going to tell you that. And then practice, go on lots of dates, etc. But this is such a general question. The answer is have good game, right? That's the answer, right? It's like, how do you be attractive for women? Well, do you have 50 hours for me to just like tell you every single thing I can think of? It's, whatever. Yeah, this have good game. Sorry. Unfortunately, that's the answer here. Have good game. How do you feel about setting dates straight to the house? I'm sure the close rate is higher. Comes from initials LR. I don't do this. I personally do not do dates straight to the house. I will, if the girl invites me straight to her house, I will consider it. But even that, I'm a little leery for personal safety reasons. Because you just don't know. You met the girl online, and who the fuck knows, right? So who knows if it's even a girl by the time, maybe it's a guy who has a girl accomplice to talk to on the phone and whatever. I really do prefer to set my dates not at home for that reason, for safety concerns. Because I know safety concerns, a girl consideration, and whatnot. But I'm a high value guy. I could, if you sold me into sex slavery, I'd be a valuable asset, right? So I don't want that. I also don't want to be robbed or whatever. So I don't want that, first of all. But then secondly, I don't want that because it's just harder to get the girl to agree to the meetup. Like, the degree of difficulty to get the girl to meet at your house instead of a bar versus the degree of difficulty for me, was, as someone with good game, to take her home from the bar once I've been there. It's just easier, right? It's just an easier step. Also, I like the fact of not bringing the girl home at the start of the date, because at the level of game I'm at, I'm going to bring the girl home basically every date anyway. But I like the fact that there was a process there, and I framed it, and then she had to earn it, and there was a build up, and there was foreplay, etc. Because what I've found is one of the biggest mistakes you'll make in an advanced level is what I call pulling too early, right? And this happens in night game. You pull straight from the bar home very quickly, and then the girl's uncomfortable because you haven't built enough connection. Whereas if you'd spent 20 more minutes with her at the bar before going home, it would have been straightforward once you get her home. Same thing. If the girl comes straight to your house, she might be nervous. She might, have some issue with it. She might be on edge, etc. Whereas the girl who would have come straight to your house and comes to the bar is still equally as down to have sex with you. You're just in a different location. She'll still be equally as easy to get home from the bar as she would have been from the internet. But you have, for all those other girls that would have been nervous or that would have been an issue, it's not an issue. And then also, you don't lose all the girls that object to coming straight to your place and are like, feel weirded out by it or flake because of it or whatever. So I personally don't do it. You can do it. Absolutely no problem. You just would want to phrase it and frame it as casually as possible. Make it not a big deal. During the whole COVID thing, there's a good reason for it. So by all means, you could do that. But even then, what I would try to do probably is be like, hey, we can, grab dinner, or like, I'll make you dinner, or we can have drinks, et cetera, et cetera. I'm in this area. Let's meet here. And we can just meet here for like a quick minute. And then we can head inside and get warm or something like that. But I'd still suggest meeting outside your place. you're going to have to walk them up anyway, right? You could almost consider it like the prelude to the walking up. Just meet like a block away, and then walk them up. Also, again, I mentioned safety, but also the safety of your place, right? Let's say the girl turns out to be crazy. Do you really want a stalker that knows where your place is without having been able to screen her, et cetera, et cetera? So I don't like doing the straight back place. I find my response, or sorry, my success rate is plenty high without doing that. And also maybe even higher because of, the girls that actually come on the date that wouldn't. So it's not my go-to, but you certainly can do it. And the big thing is just make it as not a big deal as possible. Make it not a straight up just for sex kind of thing where possible, etc. Okay. Question from Logan. You talk about being polarizing and grabbing attention in a positive way in a profile. Are there specific elements a good profile should strive to include to do this? Yeah. Basically, there's basically three things a good profile should have, right? And the whole idea of a good profile is to give a girl a sense emotionally of what dating you will be like, and hopefully that's a good sense, like a sense that's very positive that she'd be into and want to brag to her friends about. So the three things I try and include in every single profile is one, some kind of a hook, and hook is basically just what gets her attention, what makes her like view more of the profile. And ideally, it's not an overt hook. It's not just like I included this one sentence as a hook. Ideally, it's that the other content of the profile is engaging enough that serves as the hook. But somehow, somewhere, there has to be something intriguing or attention grabbing in the profile. Next thing is, profile should convey something about you, ideally, and it should convey something about what you're looking for in her. Between the two, what you're looking for in her is actually more important, because one, it shows high value, obliquely the fact that you have standards, and then two, the fact that you're saying certain things about her, it conveys things about you. So, for example, if you say you want an educated girl, it implies you're educated. You want a girl that goes to the gym, implies you're fit. You want a girl that's adventurous and travels, implies you do the same. And so it's a much better way of bragging than bragging about yourself directly. So I tend to focus more on the what I'm looking for in the girl part, and then I convey myself obliquely through that. Although I will, especially in longer profiles like in a Match.com or OkCupid type site, I will write more of an overt about me part as well. Okay. Okay. This one. How do I interpret an out of nowhere silence after a normal conversation? Says Ivan. And so this is an interesting one. This is actually a very vague question. It's actually kind of impossible to answer, but I'm going to take one particular interpretation of it and answer it because there is one situation that's very good that gives a general kind of rubric for this. So when you say out of nowhere silence in a normal conversation, I'm going to change this a little bit to an out of normal silence in a good conversation. Because I don't know what a normal conversation is to you. If it's a boring conversation, they go silent. That's a very different thing, and that's your fault. But if you're having a good conversation, you've messaged something that there's no reason for it to be negative. One of the things you can do is actually just give an entitled response, like ... question mark, something like that. Something along those lines. There may even be I don't use these versions, but maybe a version like "You still there?" or like "You alive?" or something like that could work. But I like ... question mark. It's more subtle, and those are the ones I particularly use in those situations. Specifically, the time this comes up the most is when the girl has basically all but agreed to plans, and then you solidify the plans and she doesn't respond. Especially if you say, "Hey, how does the drink sound?" She says, "That sounds great. I'm excited about it." And then you say, "Cool. My number's this. What's yours?" Or maybe you're in text already and say, "Okay, cool. What's your weekend look like?" And then she doesn't respond. Now, there is no reason not to respond there. She was positive. She was already like basically agreeing to plans in principle, et cetera, et cetera. But then she just doesn't have a response there. So there, it's silence is awkward and makes no sense. And oftentimes, the reason she didn't reply is not for a negative reason, but because maybe she doesn't want to explain to you that she's busy this weekend. She doesn't want to say no, and so she's nervous about it, so she doesn't write back. Or maybe she just didn't get it yet, or who knows. But in that case, just a reminder, an entitled reminder is actually the best way to go. And that's actually saved so many good interactions for me. There are so many times the entire interaction is good. You're making plans. You're this close. And then she goes silent. And guys who have like read the theory and they're like, well, silence, ping value into the void. So, and then they just go all the way back to the start, like, hey, look at a picture of a cute kitten. Wait, your last message was, she said, let's make plans. You said, let's make plans. She said, sounds good. You said, how's your weekend look? She doesn't respond. You're like, hey, check out this cute kitten. That is fucking weird, man. That is weird. It's completely out of context. And it's so uncalibrated and it's so needy and lame. Do not do that. Do not do that. And I've seen guys do that. Okay? Don't do that. When things are good and you have every reason to expect you should have gotten a good response and you didn't, give an entitled response instead of this needy bullshit response, please. Okay. Okay, this one's kind of funny. What are the best poses for photos? How do I look my best physically when taking a photo? So I will say, first of all, I'm not a photographer, although I have worked with photographers quite a bit. I've had photographers and videographers on my team, and I've taken a lot of photos myself. So I have some knowledge of this, but photographers will know certain things better than me. Like, for example, I can see when a photo is lit well, but I actually am not very good at setting up lighting for a photo, as an example, right? So I'm not the perfect person to ask this, but I do have some things to say. And the big things I'll say are the things that I know what not to do, and the big mistakes I see. One is, you do not have to smile in your photos. You do not have to smile in your photos, especially if you're not good at smiling in photos. A lot of guys look really lame when they smile in photos. A lot of guys have like this needy, very like, please approve of me smile. And it's awful in an online dating profile. Please, please, please don't do that. Please don't use that smile if you have it, right? You can have a stern look. You can have a sultry look. You can have a smirk. You can have different things like that that are going to work way better than a smile. Second thing is, you do not have to look at the camera. You don't. Okay. It's a decent idea to have one photo in your profile where you look at the camera, but even that's not necessary. A lot of times guys look better not looking at the camera, simply because they're not the greatest at posing, and they're not the greatest at hitting that moment where they're interacting with the camera. Whereas if you're looking off to the side, you don't have to have the emotion coming through in the exact moment where the photo is taken. So it's just your degree of your margin for error, I guess, is much, much bigger when you're not looking at the camera. So actually, I suggest, if you're having trouble taking photos, maybe don't look at the camera. Beyond that, you just want to have good posture, look good, be stylish, et cetera, normal things like that. As far as like stances to use, look in a magazine. Look in a magazine, see how they're standing, see how they're sitting, emulate that. That certainly won't take you far wrong. So that part's pretty easy. But you don't have to smile. You don't have to look at the camera. And also just take a million photos. Take an absolute million photos and choose the best ones. And if you do a photo shoot and they all suck, practice posing in the mirror, go back out and take some more photos afterwards. So those are some general things. Those are some general things. But it's more of what not to do than what to do. But I think it'll help probably 80% of the mistakes that guys are making. So I think it's a good answer. And that was from Carl. So thanks for that, Carl. This is an interesting one. How to date and attract bossy and confident women via online game, says Aditya. So here's my question. So confident women, I'm all for. Sure, I'm good with that. Why do you want a bossy woman? Right now, the girl who is bossy, or like a high level CEO or something like that, or like a powerful woman in the world in general, fine. But you want a woman to be bossy to you? Is that what you want? Because I mean, there are some guys that are into that. Some guys are like just submissive guys, and they want to be dominated, and that's their fetish or whatever. So maybe that's the thing. But in general, that does not appeal to me. That's not something I want. And I'm not specifically looking to make a girl more bossy, because that's going to make everything in game harder for me. I don't want to encourage the girl to be bossing me around. I like my personal freedom. Personally, right? Now, maybe if you want to role play that because it turns you on in the bedroom, you can do that, but you could even do that from a position of strength. Be like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if X, Y, Z? But yeah, I'm not looking for a girl to be bossy. But a confident woman for sure, and a girl who's bossy to other people, absolutely sure, fine. If you want to attract that, you probably need to be that yourself. You need to be confident, high value yourself in most cases. And then you want to hold your frame, but you want to hold your frame soft, which is kind of an advanced technique, right? So there's different levels of frame control. There's being in a bad frame and getting frame controlled, which is not good. There's frame controlling where it's very obvious you're frame controlling. It's very clunky, which is very intermediate in game and comes on. It'll get you a lot of shit test. It'll work occasionally. And then there's high level frame control, which is where you are controlling the frame, but you're making the girl feel as though she's making the decisions. Like she's just chasing you and following your frames and stuff like that without you having been like, here's the frame you must follow. Instead, you're subtly suggesting things, and she just finds herself chasing and finds herself trying to please you and that kind of stuff. So the real answer for this, in my opinion, is have the type of game where you are setting bars and getting girls to the chase, but you're not doing it by explicitly saying. You're doing it a lot by implicit. And it's this idea of what I call inception, which is truly actually the hallmark of advanced game. So getting to advanced game will help a lot. In terms of confident girls in general, getting rid of the bossy thing, I'll say confident and smart girls, because that's what I tend to be really, really good with. In general with them, I actually let them talk more, right? I'll let them talk because they're going to talk. They're going to carry the conversation. And I like hearing themselves talk, so I'll let them talk. But what I will do is I will lead the conversation. Usually I'll lead the conversation through talking quite a bit. in this case, what I'll do is I'll lead the conversation through listening and then through just kind of like nudging it in the right direction. So if they're talking in a direction that's not useful or not taking things towards sex, I'll nudge the conversation in that way, and then I'll let them talk some more. And then as long as they're on that topic, that's great. I'd prefer them talking on that topic to me talking on that topic because they're investing more. It's actually better. It's actually easier. But if they start getting off to topics that are not escalating, topics that are mundane and boring, or going away from sex, I'll step in and I'll nudge the conversation. And then once the conversation's been nudged in the appropriate direction, I'll let them talk some more. So I will say with smart and confident girls, letting them talk and I call it letting them talk themselves into bed is a very good technique and one that I mainly do. But you do still have to be engaged in the conversation. You do still have to keep nudging the conversation in the right direction and then participating, strongly every once in a while. But yeah, you can let them talk more as long as the conversation topic is good and useful and good framed. As soon as it's bad, unuseful, bad framed, that's when you need to get involved and make sure to steer the conversation back to something a little bit better. Okay. So there's a couple of questions here that are super specific. Like, what is a specific message for this? What's a specific message for that? Those are very hard because they're very, very contextual. It's a lot easier to kind of give the general idea of what a message would be, and then you can go based on the previous history of the previous interaction, than it is to say like, what's the example? What's an example of this, or what's the best response in this exact situation, etc. So if they're too specific, it's going to be hard. Um, but I'll try my best on these two. I'm going to answer these like together, kind of as one question. So first one says, can you give some examples of low versus high polarization in an online game? That's from Felix or Felix, I'm not sure. And the next one is best way to reengage after a week if she doesn't respond to a statement. That's from Amir. Okay, so these are two very specific ones. High polarization versus low polarization. One example would be like how you mentioned sex, right? So having some sex in your profile, having some like idea that you are a sexual being in your profile is a good thing. But flat out saying like talking about like female body parts and stuff like that is probably not a good way to go. It's very overt. It's very kind of what would I say? It's very almost needy and try hard in a way. And it's also gonna be very likely to make the girl nervous or uncomfortable. So it's not so good. However, if you were to, instead of mentioning specific body parts, you could mention just like the phrase like so like being or intimate moments with someone, or if for example you said I've had guys say that like I've had in profiles that I've helped guys write things like how do I phrase it exactly? You'll be more impressed by XYZ, like some personality trait, than by your photos. However, you do still need to be attractive. We are on a dating site, something like that. So it's saying, the polarizing, hey, you need to be attractive. Hey, I am looking for physical appearance, but it's not saying like just looking for a fat ass, right? There's a difference in that. There's a kind of a classiness to it and a subtlety about how you're saying it overall. In terms of the second one about what do you do to after she doesn't respond for a week to a statement, it really depends where you're at and what the statement was. And typically, if you like the girl, you're into the girl, you shouldn't be waiting a week anyway online. It should be a few days. If she hasn't responded in a few days, you should be messing her. A week is really already too long. But the real answer is you have to look at where you're at in the interaction and where it went badly, how far along it is. So, for example, if you're just trying to get an initial response from her, she's not responding, you should almost reopen, like send another opener. If you almost made plans and she doesn't respond, then it's that dot 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 question mark, that other thing that we talked about before. And then there's other stuff in between, right? And then the other one is if you overtly wrote a bad text or something like that, your actual last message was overtly bad, which hopefully we avoid most of the time. But if your last message was actually bad, you can sort of apologize without apologizing. You'd be like, LOL, just kidding, obviously, and then continue the conversation or something like that. But those are a little bit tougher, and those are very specific because it depends on the specific mistake you made. So hopefully we're not in that situation very often. Okay. Next one from initials KB. When the girl is clearly DTF and the convo goes well, does it make sense to go for a soft close, or should you do a hard close instead? Well, so here's the issue, right? I don't know in what context you're talking about. And by the way, girl, clearly DTF. I don't even. So I'm gonna assume you mean online, like you're messaging a girl online and she's clearly DTF. Then in that case, the question there is, can we meet up tonight? right? Can you get the meetup right now tonight? Or can you get her on the phone right now tonight? Right now, like, and make the date right now. Because DTF, it lasts kind of, but it doesn't necessarily transcend time, especially if you meet the girl and like from like the very first message, she's like clearly like, I'm bored tonight. I'm looking for a guy to hook up with. Okay, by all means, get her on the date right then and there. But as far as like soft close versus hard close, I still lean towards a softer close. Just make sure that you're continually moving things forward. Where you're going to get in trouble with like the DTF girl is when you're not moving things forward. If you start stagnating or going backwards, she's going to get bored and you're going to lose it. But as long as you're moving things forward, if you don't move it forward fast enough, she'll still go with it. It's still getting better. And she'll oftentimes move it forward for you. Right. And in fact, even with the girl that seems DTF, one of the things that you can do to mess it up is if she seems DTF, but you're even more DTF than her, then she may even get weirded out by that. So I still like the softer close. I still like being more subtle. I still don't mind closing in 2 texts instead of 1, etc. But you definitely do need to be moving in a positive direction. If she's down and you have some urgency, you'd like to meet up now, absolutely meet up now, and absolutely send that next text sooner too. The other thing is like, oh, this girl seems DTF. Let me wait 4 hours to text her so I don't seem needy. No, 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 no. She likes you now. She wants to meet up now. Go meet up now. Okay. Don't overthink these things. But yeah, I still like soft closes over hard closes almost always. The big thing though is that the progression needs to be positive. What you want to avoid is flat or negative trajectory. That's the big thing to avoid. Um, all right. Let's see. We got a bunch more questions. I'll go through probably a few more questions. Probably not gonna go through all of these, but we'll go through a few more of these. Okay. What topic should be avoided when opening an online game? So typically, just this from Matt. Bad topics in general, things like religion and politics, are probably awful in game in general conversation, especially in the United States nowadays. Politics, please no. And then, but also you should avoid being overtly too sexual. Those are probably the 3 biggest ones to avoid: religion, politics, and being too sexual. Right? You don't want stuff that's polarizing in the wrong way. You don't want stuff where it's basically risk and reward. Right? What's the upside of this? And what's the downside of this? And if it has a small upside and a big downside, you don't want to do it. Talking about politics or religion, if you hit it exactly right, the girl may like the fact that you had the same view as her, but she's not going to be aroused, right? She may feel comfort, she's not feeling arousal. And if you have the wrong one, you're just immediately dead in the water. So risk to reward is not very good. The thing with being overtly like sexual, body part level sexual and whatever, is that there's some small segment of girls that'll be very down with that and will really like it, and you'll get to sex very quickly. But that subsegment of girls would have also responded to something a lot less strong, and you've weeded out way too many girls with that initial highly sexual, highly polarizing kind of thing. So polarizing in the wrong way is what you want to mostly avoid. The other thing to avoid, it's not a topic, but you want to avoid being boring. So you want to avoid questions like hi or what's up, how you doing, just boring shit like that. How's your day? That's just like, it's just too bland, and every guy in the world is writing that to them. So those are the things you want to do. All right, we'll do just like maybe a couple more questions. Next one: how do I analyze my text game after she leaves me on red? Well, first of all, when she leaves you on red, you should not be analyzing your text game. You should be figuring out the next text to send. Analyzing your text game comes after the fact. But in general, the good model is the 4 types of text model, which is a good one to start with. There's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of things, like for example, in the online dating bootcamp, I go much more in depth in it. But the general gist is you want to identify the type of text she just sent. Right? You want to identify, did she silence, which is just red, right? Like leaving you on red is silence. But then you want there's also then shit test or or something logical or something positive. And so when you got silence, yes, you got silence, but you also want to look at the overall context. Did you get silence after it's been generally positive, or did you get multiple silences back to back, et cetera, et cetera? And you want to look at the first place where things started going awry and start unraveling from there. So if you got silence, but actually before that, you had a really good flirty conversation, and then it got logical, boring silence. Whatever you did to get silence is probably not the greatest, but it's also quite possible that you messed up 3 texts ago. It's also quite possible that you started a negative trajectory. And the reason you got silence wasn't because this text was particularly worse than the other ones. It's that all of them were becoming boring and she just kind of overall lost interest. So you do want to look more holistically than just at the silence itself, especially when diagnosing. You want to look at where things started to go downhill or started to not be as good. This is not really a question because it's not even a sentence. It's just a statement, but I'll answer it as though it's a question. This is from Malcolm. It says simple structure for attractive personality traits on your profile. I guess he means what is a simple structure for attractive personality traits in your profile, because that would make it a question. Um, so I, so I'll give you kind of structures of profiles. Again, I mentioned that you want the hook about you and about her, right? And focusing on about her is really good. Having some push pull is good. Saying the things you're not looking for is very, very good. Typically, um, in a perfect profile, if I was writing a long form profile like a Match.com, it would be kind of something that's pretty hooky at the start. Then it'd be some kind of challenge to her, a little bit about me, that's probably cocky, and then I would maybe have a finalization, like ending it up with something that is that kind of builds a little bit of comfort or hope that I'm not just a total douchebag, has a little bit of sincerity to it, but still doesn't negate the value I had before. And then I might end on a challenge or end it on like something kind of witty or pithy, so that I leave her like with something in her mind as opposed to being bored at the end. So that would be kind of an ideal structure, but it just depends. And whenever I'm doing the profile calls with any individual person, I'm looking at their traits and what's the best stuff they have going for them. So if the material they come up with about themselves is much better than the material they come up with about the girl, oftentimes I actually will lead with that because it's the more interesting stuff, and then I'll do what they're looking for in the girl afterwards, because we're molding it from the material we have. So an ideal scenario would be like get their attention, challenge them, tell about yourself, and then kind of reconcile and have something more sincere. And the idea there is that general gist that you go value first and then comfort in game. Same thing, value first and then comfort in your online bio. But it just depends. It depends what facts you have and what you're working with. And so I don't want to. You got to go with the right raw materials. It's like, for example, if you're like coaching a sports team, and your sports team is good at certain things, like maybe you're very small and quick, and then another team's like very like huge and slow. Well, you'd want different strategies, right? For the big slow team, you'd want to play a certain strategy. For the small quick team, you'd want to play a different strategy. And so you don't want a one size fits all strategy at all times. But that is a general structure, right? And the structure should follow the general progression of live game as well, and the general progression of female emotions, which is that you start with value and then comfort comes later, because they don't care about connection until they know you have value. Okay. So I just want to remind you guys again, it's getting on towards like an hour or two now. It's very, very soon. Online dating bootcamp. It's $400 off currently. It's not going to be that for much longer at all. So go check it out. It's at Todd V Online. You will be very, very glad you did. Again, I sit down with you. I'll make your profile for you. I'll make your photos for you. And then we'll work on tweaking every single aspect of your game, getting it as close to perfect as possible over the next 6 weeks. It's incredibly comprehensive. You're going to absolutely love it. I've started having the calls already with some guys, and already I have guys getting results like, oh my God, I never got matches before. Now I'm getting matches. Or, I just had, the girl who's absolutely girl in my dreams, like super like me and go on a date. Like really amazing results. Like it's amazing. It's really shocking. It's kind of a testament to how bad most guys' profiles are, I guess. But it is really shocking how some small tweaks in your profiles and photos and maybe your first message can just magnify your results by so much. So I really want you guys to experience that. I'd love to help you guys out with that. So again, check that out. It's at toddvonline.com. It's on sale, $400 off for the next few hours only from the posting of this. So go check it out as soon as you possibly can. You're not going to want to miss it. So go check that out. Again, toddvonline.com. And with that said, thanks for tuning in for this. This is the second time I've done it. I did a trial run a couple days ago that didn't go as well for technical reasons. But hopefully you like that one if you're on it. And hopefully you like this one as well. If you do like this, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know, etc. And maybe I can do more of these, because it is kind of fun to interact with you guys more personally. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Get online. Go check out toddvonline.com for that discount on the online dating bootcamp. You'll be glad you did. And I will see you next time. Take care.